Imagine a world where we can drop a 30,000-pound precision bomb from a stealth aircraft flying halfway across the globe, penetrating deep into solid mountain rock to vaporize a hidden missile silo. Yet, at the very same time, we cannot keep the peace on a street in Belfast, or stop a massive welfare fraud scheme in Minnesota, or even guarantee that a signed international treaty will be honored by the soldiers on the ground. It seems like the grander our technology becomes, the more fragile our actual control over reality gets. How did we arrive at this bizarre point of convergence?
It is the ultimate paradox of the modern era. We have mastered the micro-tactical element of warfare, but we are completely losing the macro-societal grip. When you look at the events unfolding across the globe, from the riots in Northern Ireland to the precision strikes in the Persian Gulf, they are not isolated incidents. They are symptoms of a singular, massive shift. The old systems of authority, whether it is the local police force, the royal family, or even the concept of national sovereignty, are facing a crisis of credibility. The big picture here is a global breakdown of deterrence and trust.
Let us trace the lines connecting these seemingly disparate events. On one side, you have domestic anger in the West. We see protesters in Belfast reacting to a horrific stabbing, fueled by a feeling that their borders are unmonitored and their voices are ignored. Then you look at the United States, where public trust is eroded by stories of massive taxpayer fraud and accusations of two-tier policing. And on the other side, you have B-2 stealth bombers dropping GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators on underground Iranian missile bases. How do these domestic frustrations connect to high-level geopolitical warfare?
The connecting thread is the failure of the established order to protect the basic social contract. The domestic public feels unprotected from rapid changes, whether that is immigration, economic fraud, or digital censorship. Meanwhile, on the international stage, superpowers are realizing that traditional military deterrence is no longer enough. Iran did not stop its proxy attacks or nuclear enrichment because of diplomatic statements. They only paused when the United States threatened to seize Karg Island, essentially targeting their entire economic survival. The message is clear. Whether you are an angry citizen in the United Kingdom or a military commander in Tehran, the official narratives are no longer believed. People only respond to raw, tangible leverage.
That leverage seems incredibly volatile, though. Look at the situation in Iran. The diplomats sign a 60-day ceasefire in Islamabad, but hours later, speedboats in the Strait of Hormuz are firing warning shots at commercial vessels. It is like the right hand has no idea what the left hand is doing, or worse, it simply does not care.
Exactly. We are seeing a fragmentation of command. In the past, you negotiated with a state, and the state controlled its forces. Now we are dealing with decentralized networks. The diplomatic wing of a government might want sanctions relief, but the hardline military wing, like the Revolutionary Guard, views compromise as existential suicide. They would rather keep their missiles hidden in mountain bunkers and continue the fight, regardless of what is signed on paper. This means any peace deal is highly unstable. It is not a resolution, it is just a reload interval.
If we look at this entire global landscape through a strategic lens, it helps to organize the chaos. Let us run a SWOT analysis on this big picture. What are the core strengths of the current global establishment in navigating this crisis?
The primary strength is unmatched technological and military superiority. The ability to execute a surgical, precision campaign for over 100 days without sustaining significant casualties is historically unprecedented. Think about the autonomous sea drone rescue of the downed helicopter crew in the Persian Gulf. That is a massive operational strength. Additionally, the dominant role of the US dollar and the ability to control global energy choke points, like threatening to seize oil infrastructure, remains a highly potent economic weapon.
But the weaknesses are glaring, aren't they? Especially on the home front.
Absolutely. The biggest weakness is the internal polarization and the erosion of domestic institutional trust. When citizens believe the justice system is biased, or that their tax dollars are being funneled to fraudulent schemes, the domestic foundation crumbles. You cannot project strength abroad when your own cities are experiencing lawlessness and political infighting. There is also a strategic weakness in relying on air campaigns alone. You can destroy 90% of an adversary's missile capability, but that remaining 10% can still shut down global shipping lanes if they choose their moments wisely.
That brings us to opportunities. Where can leaders find a way out of this cycle of escalation?
The current crisis actually presents an opportunity to restructure international alliances. For example, European nations that previously tolerated regional instability are now desperate for energy security. This creates an opportunity for a more unified, multilateral enforcement of trade routes and border security. There is also an opportunity to streamline domestic governance, cutting out the bureaucratic bloat and fraud that fuels public anger. We see hints of this in the political shifts in California and the UK, where there is a growing demand for practical, transparent leadership rather than performative ideology.
And the threats? What keeps you up at night when looking at this map?
The biggest threat is the unpredictability of fractured regimes. If the leadership in an adversarial state is wounded or divided, there is no centralized authority to hold accountable. A rogue commander could easily trigger a major war by ignoring a ceasefire. There is also the threat of asymmetric warfare. Cheap drones and localized blockades can disrupt trillions of dollars in global trade, neutralizing the advantage of expensive stealth bombers. Finally, the threat of domestic social unrest in Western nations could paralyze decision-making at critical geopolitical moments.
It is a delicate balance. Before we map out how to navigate these threats, let us take a quick break to talk about our sponsor.
If you are trying to make sense of this rapidly changing world, you need a source that cuts through the noise. That's why you should listen to The New Sentinel. It is a podcast dedicated to deep-dive investigative journalism, bringing you the facts on global conflict, economic shifts, and domestic policy without the mainstream spin. The New Sentinel gives you the strategic analysis you need to understand the big picture. Subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform and stay ahead of the curve.
Now, looking at this complex SWOT matrix, how do we actually move forward? Let us build a MOST analysis to outline a path. What should the overarching mission be for leaders trying to stabilize this landscape?
The mission must be to restore credible deterrence abroad while rebuilding institutional trust at home. You cannot separate the two anymore. Foreign policy and domestic stability are now completely intertwined.
To achieve that mission, what are the specific objectives we need to set?
First, secure and guarantee the free flow of commerce through global maritime choke points, specifically the Strait of Hormuz, within the next 60 days. Second, establish verifiable long-term frameworks for nuclear non-proliferation that do not rely on the honor system. And third, implement transparent domestic reforms to eliminate systemic fraud and restore public confidence in the rule of law.
Those are ambitious objectives. What strategies do we deploy to get there?
The primary strategy is to pair economic leverage with surgical military capability. Instead of endless, costly ground wars, we use targeted pressure on key financial assets, like oil export hubs, combined with high-tech defense systems. Domestically, the strategy must shift towards streamlining governance, focusing on core responsibilities like public safety and border integrity, rather than ideological projects. We see this desire in the public support for figures who promise to clean up failing cities and secure basic systems.
And finally, what are the concrete tactics to execute those strategies?
On the military front, tactics include deploying advanced suppression of enemy air defenses, like the Wild Weasel operations, to keep hostile radar blind, and utilizing autonomous recovery systems to minimize personnel risk. Economically, we enforce strict maritime blockades and target smuggling networks directly. Domestically, the tactics involve rigorous auditing of public funds, swift prosecution of welfare fraud, and ensuring equal application of the law to rebuild trust in local policing.
It is fascinating how even the smallest details reflect this struggle for order. Even in the British royal family, we see Prince William pushing to streamline properties and cut back on grace and favour housing for non-working royals. It is the same theme. The elite are realizing that the public will no longer tolerate the optics of privilege without performance.
Exactly. Whether it is a monarchy, a city council in Los Angeles, or a military command in Washington, the era of taking public compliance for granted is over. People want results, efficiency, and fairness. If the established institutions do not deliver, the public will look for alternative voices, even if those voices are disruptive.
We are left with a profound question. as we watch these ceasefires play out. When the ink dries on a treaty signed in a quiet conference room, does it actually mean anything to the soldier waiting in a dark tunnel beneath a mountain, clutching a weapon, and believing that compromise is a sin? The gap between what our leaders say and what is actually happening on the ground is the most dangerous space in the world right now. Can we bridge that gap? Or are we simply waiting for the next breakdown? Thank you for listening to this episode. Keep your eyes on the horizon, and we will see you next time.